With the help of Hashem, we are learning Moed Katan Daf Chaf Hey. We left off on Daf Chaf. We left off on Daf Chaf Hey Amud Aleph, 18 lines from the top of the Amud, or towards the end of the last narrow line. What we began this Amud with is, first of all, various non-relatives for whom we are chayiv to rend our clothing to do kriya. We learned that we are all chayiv to do kriya when we are aware of the passing of a chacham, however that's defined. Then we learned about the chiyuv of kriya for any adam kosher. Just to clarify an important detail, there is a difference between a chacham and an adam kosher. When a person hears about the passing of a chacham, everyone is chayiv to do kriya. When it comes to an adam kosher, it's not that you're chayiv to do kriya only when you were there b'shas yitzias neshama. That's for every yid. But by an adam kosher, you're only chayiv to do kriya if you had some sort of contact with the person after their passing, but before the burial. You were with them, you were in contact with them. You understand? That's when you're chayiv for an adam kosher. A chacham is even more. Even if you're not present, not only not b'shas yitzias neshama, you're not there by the levaya, you have no contact with them, you're chayiv. And then again, you're ha'omed al meis b'shas yitzias neshmasa, you also chayiv kriya, unless the person, God forbid, is a real apikoides. And what we will begin right now is to learn some more pratim about kriya. But the whole daf today is going to be amazing details of that which transpired by the funeral and burial of Rav Huna, who was a chacham in Bavel, but like many people, he was transported to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. We're going to be learning on today's daf about hespedim, about eulogies that were correct, eulogies that were incorrect. B'chlal, by a hesped, on one hand, we're not allowed to exaggerate. Exaggerating during a hesped is not good for the person who passed away, because those words will be used as the standard and he'll be judged to see indeed whether he was on that level. On the other hand, you have to embellish something, because people know, we're going on the premise that people are modest. So whatever is known about you normally means that the person was greater than that. So I don't know how to define it exactly, but the words will be that a certain amount of embellishment is recommended, and you have to know where to draw the line and not be mizak to exaggerate. And finally, on Daf Chafei Amud Beis, we're going to see that at the passing of great tzaddikim, the Gemara is going to speak about the passing of various Amoraim, there were certain physical manifestations that happened in their city, in the world. And all of that indicates, and this is a theme that we have a lot in Chassidus, that a tzaddik is here in the world, the Alter Rebbe quotes the Zohar, more yater mi b'chayoyi. Now, it's harder to be in touch with them. You have to make a greater effort, which is why some of those physical manifestations weren't that positive, which showed that it is a avada. It's tragic and it's sad, and you have to rip kriya and you have to go into mourning. But on the other hand, not for a person to think that after the passing of the tzaddik, they're no longer here. Adarabah. As we'll explain when we learn the sugya, the whole meaning of life. What's life? The connection between ruchnius and gashmius. The ultimate, the ruchnius, is a neshama. Really, a neshama is God beyond ruchnius. That becomes one with the ultimate gashmius. The lowest part of this of gashmius is olam haza. The lowest part of olam haza is the offer, is the earth. So imagine, so there's a chibur between the highest and the lowest. That's a human being. And even after the neshama separates itself from the body, but that neshama remains connected to this world when they are tzaddikim, as we will learn throughout this entire daf. Let's start again on Daf Chafei Amud Aleph, again at the end of the last narrowest line. Kinoch nafshei derab safra. Now we began this Amud learning that when a chacham passes away, and as we explained, not only if you had some contact with that person by an adam kosher, even if you had no contact, but you became aware of the passing of a chacham, says the Braisa, hakol kareivov. Everyone is like their relatives, which means, including other things, everyone is chayiv to do kriya. Now, there were the chachamim that we are focusing on. They misunderstood that braisa, and as we'll see in a moment, they understood chacham means someone from whom you learn Torah. And since they felt they didn't learn Torah from Rav Safra, even though he passed away, like they didn't rip kriya. I think there's a Gemara in front of my place over there by the standard. Amri, right, the first minim size line. And they explain themselves, Take, Chacham Shemeis, you got to rip Kriya, but Loi Gomenin and Minei. He's not my Chacham, we didn't learn Torah from him. So Abaya corrected them. Amlo Abaya, Mitanya Harav. Harav means a teacher. That's the meaning of Harav. A Chacham means a sage. It doesn't mean a teacher. Chacham Shemeis Tanya. That's number one. Number two, even based on your misunderstanding that you're only chayiv to do kriya if he's your teacher. Don't think he's not your teacher. He is your teacher, not directly, but indirectly. Because kol yoima, every single day, shemait say bepumim medei midrasha. We are quoting his teachings in the base Midrash. No, not everyone quoted it the same way. So you never, many things you learned from him indirectly without even knowing that he's the source, but you are also considered his students. Okay, so they stood corrected. Now they're chayiv to do kriya, right? So, 1 second. So, Sover, they thought, my dahava, it's too late. In other words, he was already buried. So therefore, it's too late. Amalu Abaya says, no. We learned in Abraisa another detail. Chacham, calls man she'oiskim behesped. You still chayiv lekroya. When are you oisik behesped? Look at what happens right now. Certainly during Shiva. A lot during Shivas, people speak about the greatness of the Niftar or of the Nifteris. And the truth is, sometimes even beyond the Shiva, when people get together. So it's not too late. Oh, so if it's not too late, so Savr Lemikra La'alta, they wanted to rip Kriya right then and there. So Amalu Abaya, again, he corrected them that Chacham, Kavoidoi behespedoi. Kavoidoi behespedoi means that the ideal time to rip Kriya, if it's already after the burial, is when they're still being masped, the person. In other words, you know what Abaya was telling them? Make a hesped. Now, if they didn't know how to make a hesped, wait until there'll be a hesped. And there were people that were continuously still speaking about the greatness of Rab Safra, and then rip Kriya. Let's start now the story of Rav Huna. Says the Gemara, Ki Nach Nafshi de Rav Huna. The word Nach, Nach, rested. This expression of someone who passes away, they rest. It's a gewaldige, because the challenge, as we mentioned, of the chibur hanashama beguf, is that the guf is constantly challenging the neshama, the guf and the nefesh habahamis. So passing away is called in the lashon of the Gemara a rest. There is a rest in peace. Okay, menucha.
Maybe that means lagabe chibut hakever. It's resting. There's no einish.
Oh, very good. By tzaddikim, for very good notes. By a non-tzaddik, right after the passing, lavdafka, there's rest. But by these people, there was right away. Very, very good. So Sofer, first of all, Sofer loisubi sefer Torah apuriye. They wanted to put a sefer Torah on his beard. Now, by the way, this is something that was done when Chizkiyahu HaMelech passed away, and they declared that this one fulfilled what that one. This one fulfilled that one. And by the way, where did we find this originally? By Yosef HaTzadik, that the Aron of Yosef was near the Aron HaKodesh. Kiyam zeh masher kasav b'zeh. But here by Chizkiyahu, they put a sefer Torah on his spear, and they wanted to do it by Rav Huna. Amar Luhu Rav Chizda, who was his master Talmud, and Rav Chizda, don't forget, became also the Rosh Yeshiva in Surah after Rav Huna. He was his Mamal Amakim. He says, no, not on Rav Huna's bed. Milsa the B'chayel Svirale, while he was alive, he was the one that never held that it's appropriate to be sitting on the same bed where you have a sefer Torah. So Hashta Leikum Leila Evedlei, now we're going to do it for him. Now you can argue you can't compare apples and oranges, but that's wrong. It's apples and apples, because when a tzaddik passes away, they're considered still alive to this degree. So if when you are alive, Rav Huna never sat on the same seat or bench or bed where you had a sefer Torah, so why should it change right now? I once saw that when Rav Huna was alive, the boiler Mesa Vapuriye, that he was about to sit down, but he realized we have a sefer Torah manachalei on the bed. They sat on beds. There was a sefer Torah there. So what did he do? He turned a jug. It was a jug that he turned it upside down for the floor to be now like the table top. And sefer Torah and he put the sefer Torah on this inverted jug. In other words, he took it off the bed. He put it on an even more respectful, elevated place, and only then he sat down. Alma, from that we know that he holds. So therefore, we're not going to put a sefer Torah on his beard. And by the way, that's the way we paskin. And that's not only regarding a sefer Torah, but I know that it's not shaykh in a normal setting, but for example, in a very happening place like 770, it's packed with people. So the bench is there. There's a bench, and then there is like the back of the bench that also has a little bit of a platform. And sometimes you want to sit down. On Yom Kippur, we have no seats. You had thousands of people, but if there's a sefer on that same back of the bench, you can't sit on the same bed, on the same shelf, on the same table where you have a sefer laying. It's disrespectful for that sefer. Let's go back. Okay, so first of all, they did not put a sefer Torah. Number two, they have a nafik puria mibam. The puria, the bed, the beer was so wide that it didn't fit outside the door. So how do you get it out? So first of all, so they were in a building. They were able to, there was a skylight that was much wider. They were able to transport his body outside, doing it in this unusual way by ultimately lowering it from the roof. No. We learned from Rafuna again, Chacham means when you're taking the Chacham out to bury, don't take him out in this indirect way. And what do? So the only solution it wasn't that the Rafuna was that large, is that the beer was too wide. So Savur la ashnu yemi puria la puria. Okay, let's move his body from one beer to another beer. Amalov Rab Chizda, oichet nishgot, hagamrina minei, we learned from Rafuna, chacham kavayde b'mita harashayna. And the kibbut, what's moving a person from bed to bed, that in itself is not something honorable. You got a problem now, but one second. The first bed that he was laid, that's where you keep the person. The Amar Rafuna, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, excuse me. So amazing that when the Pelishtim stole the Aron HaKodesh, connected to the passing of Elyahu and the destruction of Shiloh, ultimately after the 8 months, after God showed them, they gave it back. And they built, to be Mechaber, the Aron HaKodesh, a special wagon. And at some point, the Nach records a lot of how ultimately David HaMelech and all of the tragedies that happened until it finally came to Yerushalayim. So it says in one place, Vayarkivu, this is already when it's in our possession, Es Aroinu Elokim, El Agola Chadasha, and as the Mefarshim are medayik, not that the Yidden built a new Agola for the Aron HaKodesh. We used the new Agola that the Pelishtim built. And by the way, at the end, we use the wood for fuel for a carbon. But hold on, why wouldn't we take the Aron Kodesh off the wagon that the Pelishtim built, put it on a wagon that the Yidden built? Because once the Aron Kodesh is resting, the biggest honor is to leave it be where it is. And here we have, as we learned at the end of the Megillah, a beautiful juxtaposition of a Jew that passes away and a Sefer Torah and the Aron Kodesh. We learned dinner one from the other. Right.
All right, quick question. A group cannot make a Sefer Torah Tamei, right? You can't.
No one can make a Sefer Torah Tamei. Even a person who's alive cannot make a Sefer Torah Tamei. It's not about Tumah, it's about Kavod. Now, so what did they do? Peruz Bava, they broke the door, they broke the doorway down. My Melech played it together. That's the only solution. Once you leave the body the way it is, right? There's a beautiful expression. Let the halacha pierce the mountain. In other words, something has to give. Something that's got to give. Not Rafuna, not his honor. The building will give. The doorway will give. The building demolish. Rafuna getaros. Of course. Now, Pasach Alei Rab Abba, he began a eulogy, and he says that Roy Hoy Rabbeinu Shetisha Olav Shechina, that our Rebbe Rafuna was so worthy that the Shechina should have rested on him on a whole higher level. The only reason why he didn't merit that level, let's say, of Nevuah, Ela Shebavul Garmalei, the fact that he wasn't in Eretz Yisrael, and as Rashi writes, a rule, She'ein Shechina Shoira B'chutz La'aretz. That's a klal. Later, when one of the Abulafias claimed that he's a Navi, and by the way, we know we have a tradition that he was. We're very machshav Avraham Abulafia, who basically was a messianic figure, and he said that he's going to convert to Pope and he's going to bring Mashiach. So one of they had a lot of opposition. One of the oppositions he got was that Ashba wrote that how can a person say that God spoke to him when he's b'chutz la'aretz, and ein hashchina shreida b'chutz la'aretz. So hold on. So now Masav Rav Nachman Bar Chizda, this is so classic. So they're giving a eulogy, and during the eulogy, someone is fragging up the eulogy. So Rav Nachman, the son of Rav Chizda, or Rav Chanan, it was a son of Rav Chizda. No, he's wrong. If Rav Huna would have been worthy, the Shechina would have rested on him. He lived in Chutz La'aretz. So what? Look at Yecheskel. Who's greater than Yecheskel? Where did we have the nevuah of the MERCAVA? You know where he had it? In Bavel. Where be'eretz Kazdim. So Tafach le'avua b'sandale. So Rab Chizda, the father, kicked the son. He didn't want to make a ruckus. Whichever one made the comment, his father told his son, Amalei, Lava Minolach, didn't I tell you before, like Titreit Alma? Don't disturb the oilam over here. You're disturbing a eulogy. And he has a teretz. Because I hastakasha, so the father told him the answer. That why does it say that hoyoy hoyo? It's double expression. If I care to tell you, my hoyoy, shahoyo kfar. And as many explained, since Yecheskel ben Buzi first lived in the Holy Land, and while he was there, he merited to have that type of connection of nevuah that he had. Such a person, even when they leave l'chutz la'aretz, they don't lose that. So they can have another nevuah even b'chutz la'aretz. But someone that was never in Eretz Yisrael, that was their tradition. He can never reach that level of nevuah, and that's what they were eulogizing in Rafuna. Now we have a tradition from the Holy Baal Shem Tov, just to make it clear that we don't follow this opinion, that before the coming of Mashiach, nevuah will come back to the Jewish people. And the Rebbe spoke explicitly about the Rabbeim, that they were zoicha to these levels of nevuah. He said it about the Frierdiker Rebbe, which also meant about himself, but that's a whole different topic. Now, ki askol Hassan. So now again, keminag, even those who were not zoicha to live in Eretz Yisrael, now you can say the words, we who have a shlichus to live b'chutz la'aretz. It's not about my schus. We don't have the schus, but we're correct in doing what we need to do for God, not what we need to do for us. But to be buried, it's always good to be buried in the Holy Land. So when his remains came to Eretz Yisrael, Amru lei. So they told to Rav Ami and Avasi, who were the greats of the Holy Land, they told them Rav Huna came. Now they didn't say Rav Huna passed away. They didn't say the remains or the body of. They said that Rav Huna came, which is the way you should say it. A tzaddik doesn't pass away. But they thought that he's alive the way he was alive before. And they were intimidated by him in a good way. So they said, when we went to Bavel, we were unable to lift our heads. In other words, Rav Huna was so superior that we knew he is the final halachic authority. And they felt that him moving to Eretz Yisrael is, so to say, an intrusion on their territory. He should have stayed over there. Hashta asein hacha, hashta asein hacha asa basrin. No, he's coming to our location. My territory, in a good way. So they clarified. So Amru or Amru Lahu. So the Chedra told Rav Ami and Avasi, no. He's not moving here to live here. He's coming in his Aron, which means, he passed away. So hold on. Rav Ami and Rav Asi Nefuk, they went out to greet his body. But Rav Hila, Rav Chanina, the first widest line, loy Nefuk. Another version, Rav Hila did go out, Rav Chanina did not go out. Why? My tamam. Excuse me, Rav Chanina, then in fact, my time, why was there this machlekes whether you should go out to greet him, not go out to greet him? Because it says that even though you were not there during the passing, but now that the Aron is here, all of the dinim of mourning you have to do. You have to make the robe, as we explained, and tanchumei avelim. Okay, but udeloy nafak my time, the tanya orange mamish the opposite. If an Aron, now I'll just say it by heart to get a heads up over here. It has a lot to do with whether the body is intact or not. I know the Gemara is going to use the word skeleton, but Rashi is speaking about the body, and this is a big topic about tzaddikim. Some tzaddikim, b'chlal, never decompose. For some reason, some of these Amoyroim, or one Amoyra thought that Rav Huna passed away a while back. And al pi derech hateva, by the time his Aron came to the Eretz Yisrael, the body should have already began to decompose. And he felt that in such a case, then taka there's less dinam of avelus. You don't stand l'shura. So first of all, you have a opposite opinions recorded in the Braisa, and indeed kasha nadadi. And the answer is like kasha. It's not a machlekes tanoim. Kan, when are you chayiv to follow through all the laws of mourning, which also would imply go and greet the Aron. Shildoi kayemes. Now, guys, shildoi normally is the spinal cord. Some type shildoi, the whole skeleton. And Rashi here writes shildoi gufoi. Today, because of the modern world, if there's a passing and people are transported to Eretz Yisrael, the body is put in a very cold environment, in a freezer, the body al pidara hateva does not decompose. Then for sure, you chayev to do all of the dinim of avelus. But here, they didn't have that. You understand? So when the shildoi, when the goof is kayim, then you chayev all of the dinim of avelus. Kan, bisha ein shildoi kayim. Only problem is that Rafuna, now, Shilda Kayemes, again, we're going al Pidara Chateva because they did bring his body over quick enough for it to still be in that time frame of Shilda Kayemes by the laws of nature. Answers the Gemara. So the loy nafak, the reason why you had one some who did not go out, the loy saimur kameh, we already had this above. Saimur kameh means they didn't have all the information. Maybe I'll tell you more. Maybe the pshat is that a time passed. By the law, let's go with Rashi. By the laws of nature, the body should have already started to decompose. Loi Saimur Kamei might have meant that maybe they didn't know what type of tzaddik was Rafuna. Had they known the level of a sitkis, they would have known that his body is not decomposing. So Shilda Kayam, I think that's the correct pshat. Okay. Amri, now a new question. So aside of everything that happened until now, where are you going to bury him? Heicha Nenche. Today, you buy a plot. How did it work then? It didn't work that way. So we already spoke above that there were two general ways to bury you. They used to build a cave above the ground. When you go to Eretz Yisrael, many of the matzevas are above the ground. It's big enough to fit the body in there. They don't do it. You put it in the ground. In the ground, they used to make crypts. They used to dig a cave, and they used to dig in the cave, in the hole, certain insertions, certain indentations where the body would be laid to rest. Now, prior to this event, Rab Chia had passed away. And who are you going to bury Rafuna with? So they were trying to find who was a tzaddik that was like the counterpart, similar to Rafuna. And next to that tzaddik should he be buried. The idea of being buried near a tzaddik. Maybe if I can add, ulai, that a chassid makes a sviva. Maybe the idea that a chassid makes his environment is also after the passing. That let a chassid go into not the holiest place. Let him make a seviva around there. But anyway, this is before this idea. So who are you going to lay him with? So they said, Rafuna, his greatness wasn't only about himself, but the ikar was rebates to Yisrael. He was a great teacher. And here, if I get all this source, we have Ksubas Daf Kuvav. So he was involved in teaching Torah to others. Rab Chia's greatness, right? The whole story of Bava Metzia. And Rab Chia says that because of him, the Torah was not forgotten. We said, remember, he shechted animals himself, and he gave the meat to orphans and widows, and he made the parchments, and he wrote Chamisha Chumshei Torah and Shishi Sidrei Mishnah, and he went to villages and he taught, and he gave every chumash to a child and every seder to another child. Rab Chia was busy being manabetz Torah. He was decimating Torah. Rab Chia ribetz Torah, disseminating Torah. So they're similar. Since they have the similar characteristics, so now we're going to go into the crypt of Rab Chia. Here's the Akir, and we're going to put Rafina. Now, who would have the courage to go into that crypt? Not me. Like every step. So now they have to get a volunteer. They would seal off the crypts to go in there and to lay Rafuna near Rab Chia. So man ma'ayale, who's going to go there? So they found a volunteer. I will go in there. Why? Because the Ikamte le Talmude. Because I have a few schusim. First of all, I established my whole Talmud. That means he became proficient in the whole Torah Shabbat Peh. Ki avina bar Tmana Yisreishnin when I was 18 years old. Number one, so he felt he had the protection of Torah. Number two, he never had a seminal emission outside being with his wife. That was chus number two. Number three, umeshama lekamei. That's the ikar. That he was meshamesh Rab Chia while Rab Chia was alive. So he's not a stranger to Rab Chia. And the Yoda bi oivade, he knew the greatness of Rab Chia. Sometimes you go near a tzaddik after they passed away. If you don't understand their greatness, that's not good. So he says, I know his greatness. I have my own schusim. He felt confident. He's doing this for Rafuna, but he knows he's going into fire. Now, when the Gemara says that Rab Chaga says that I know the greatness of Rab Chia, what was that? He's writing one, that the Yoim Echad one time, is hapicha to the tefillin. When we wear tefillin, nowadays many people have ritzuas that are black on both sides. They have it because of this. So there's many areas. Let's speak be'ikid on the tefillin of the head between the bias and the dalid, or the double dalid, however the minig is. So these ritzuas, we have to be very careful. They should never be upside down. The black should always be facing up. And one time, accidentally, by Rab Chia, the tefillin got inverted. The Yosef, Allah, Arboyin Tanesa. Beyond the lead, these are big tzaddikim. I mean, they fasted 40 days. So, in other words, that's just one greatness of Rab Chia. So they accepted. You accept a volunteer because there were no other volunteers. Now, Rab Chaga got into, look what happened. So, Rab Chaga went into the crib. I love the wording. He went up. Even though physically he went down, he didn't go down. He's going into a holy place. And you know what happened? So Rab Chia, we know, had two sons. And they were both already buried, laying by his sides. Hava Gane Yehuda. I love the Gemara. Gane means sleeping. The tzaddikim are sleeping. They don't pass. So Yehuda, which was the elder son, was sleeping on his right side. Chizkiah, his second younger son, was resting mismale on the left side of the tate, of the tzaddik, of Rab Chia. Listen to the words. So this is being witnessed by Rab Chaga. When he goes in there, so Chizkiah gets up and he tells Yehuda gets up, the older brother gets up because the older brother says, I'm the older brother, I don't have to move. But you're your younger brother, you move, make place for Rafuna. How great is this? Amalei Yehuda leChizkiah, my dear younger brother, move. The Rafuna, what? Rafuna should wait, quick. They're bringing him there. He's going to lay next to Rab Chia. Okay, now Chizkiah was the one that was disturbed the most because he has to now get up. Who made him get up? Rab Chaga. Let's blame Rab Chaga. So now Rab Chaga got into potential trouble. So Bahada the Kohen, Chizkiah moved. Come Bahada Yamud the night, a pillar of fire got up with him. And Chazia, Rab Chaga, when Rab Chazia saw the pillar of fire, he was overcome with dread, with pachad, with fear. And he knew, I'm in trouble. You know how he protected himself? He lifted up the body of Rafuna. Gavaldik. Zakve la roine. He lifted it up. Now, the details, did he put him down? Could be he told Rafuna, you're on your own. Go lay down wherever you want. The stomach. And he went out. And he walked out of there. And indeed, and the fire had no effect on him. It doesn't mean an oynish, guys. Oynish means a punishment. Here means he wasn't harmed. You know, nothing negative happened to Rab Chaga. Because he lifted out, and the way I understand it is because he understood that Rafuna tzaddik is not really a nifted, a mess. He understood that. I think that can be maybe the Chassidish pshat, because he stood up Rafuna and he walked out. So it's about him understanding the greatness of the people he was dealing with. Like before, he says, I know who Rab Chia is. You have to know who they are, because if you don't appreciate who they are, then on some level, you're not going to be machabed them the way they have to be honored. End of story. Now the Gemara says, don't forget that Rab Chizda was the mamala makayim of Rab Huna. So, it's getting like that. The Rab Chizda, same thing. Swur, they also thought, to put a Sefer Torah on his beard. Same concept. This one kept what it says in that. No. He's a Talmud of Rafuna. Milsa del Rabbi Loisfirle, his Rebbe, the teacher of Rab Chizda, who is Rafuna, did not agree to that. And again, I think that's the same concept for people that are not on a level of tzaddikim. When you are alive, don't sit on the same level, on the same bed, on the same bench of a Sefer Torah. Now they passed away. No, but he's also like alive. He's a tzaddik. So you can't, nothing changed. Anan nekum ben avidway. So we should do it to the Talmud. Okay. Now another din. One of the din we learned how a father-mother is different from everyone else is that by everyone else, after the Shiva, right, we learned about shoilo. Can you stitch it up loosely? Can you properly mend the garment? So for your father and mother, you can never be ma'acher. So savur deloyle mishbal karayu, they thought, and not even to do the first step of loosely sewing it up. We're talking about after Rab Chizda's funeral. To give that much kibbut. So Amar Lahu Rabbi Yitzchak Barami, that Chacham, in other words, Chacham means, like we began today's shiur, Chacham means not your primary teacher. For the people that were not the Talmidim, so to say, of Rab Chizda, even though he was a Chacham, everyone had to do Kriya, but if he's not your primary teacher, then yes, you are allowed to do Shoylin, right? And really, and Ma'achem. And Ma'achem, you can properly mend it, but not immediately. Oh, it's right after the funeral, you can be Shoyl, and the next day you can be Ma'ach or something like that. Okay. Kinoch Nafshei, the Rabba Bar Huna, and Rav Hamnuna. Now we have two great Amoraim that lived in Bavel and they passed away, and again they're being transported to be buried in the Holy Land. Askinu Lahasam, they were brought to Eretz Yisrael. Listen to the story, Chafei Amid Beis. Kimata Agishra, they came to a bridge. Now, when tzaddikim are alive, you ever witnessed two great people coming to an entrance to a door? If it's not wide enough for both people to go together, you go, you go, you go, you go. I witnessed that. So here you have two camels, each one carrying the adon of another tzaddik, and now the camels are having this debate. In other words, so no one is going. So Kamu Gamale, the camels stopped. It was a narrow bridge. There's only room for one. So came along these tayyas, these Arabs in the Gemara, they had the sixth sense, almost always. They knew what's going on. So a certain Arab witnessed that. And he said, my hi. He knew that this is something going on. Omar Lahu, so they gave him the context. He had a sixth sense, but he didn't know the whole story. He needed to have some help. They told him, what's happening here is that these two Rabbanon, each one is honoring the other. Maramar, Marnel Beresha, Umaramar, Marnel Beresha, and no one is giving in, and the camels are sensing it, so the camels are not working. So the Arab basically the Arab says, look, there's a girs in the Yerushalmi that if I would have been asked, I'll tell you what the pask. Now, guys, who are the two Amoraim? It was Rabba Bar Huna and Rav Hamnuna. Bar Huna is the Rav Huna that we were speaking about. So he says these two are equal. That's why the camel stopped. They were equal. If one of them would have been greater, that camel would have gone forward. But the Bar Rav Huna, so it's Tzaddik ben Tzaddik. So Rabba Bar Huna should go first. Now, who did he insult with that? Rav Hamnuna. Now he's in trouble. Don't mix in. Oh, so let's go. Says Omar. He says that Dino who the Rabba Bar Huna leil beresha. Again, there's a girsa somewhere, I think in the Yerushalmi, that says because he was a great man, the son of a great man. And indeed, the camels accepted his ruling. Yakir, the Arabs know how to speak to camels. So Chalav Gamale, the problem is Chalav Gamale Rav Bar Huna. So the camel of Rav Huna Taka went first. But you know what happened? The Arab got punished because he insulted Rav Hamnuna, and now the Gemara is going to give cover to Rav Hamnuna. But Nesur Kachei Vishine, both the molars and the front teeth, the Hahutaya fell out. He lost his tzener. L'chaim. Now we gotta. There was always Yenukas, many Yenukas. You have in the Zohar a whole chela called the Yenuka. Today there is a Yid, they call him the Yenuka. Like a Yid at Tzaddik, he knows everything. Yeah. So there was a Yenuka. So Pasach Aliyah Yenuka. Alei means he began giving a hesped, for whom? For Rav Hamnuna. And he said like this, Geja. We're familiar with this word. Geja literally means a shoot off a tree. Yeshishim are great elders. So about Rav, you are saying Tzaddik ben Tzaddik, you're being Mechabe, the father, right, of Rabbah. You know who Rav Hamnuna is? Geza Yeshishim Alami Bavel. He fixed that. He said that he is a shoot from great people. His yichus is also great. He's Geja. And not only that, but with him comes the whole Sefer Mulchamas. The Sefer Torah is referred to, right? Sefer Mulchamas Hashem. There's so much that has to be understood of these words. That Hashem Yorenenu. There's real agada here to appreciate the eulogies that were given, to understand the chachma that went into it. Then he said like this, that ka'os v'kipay. Ka'os v'kipay are two types of birds that they only live in deserts and in desolated places. So whenever you want to speak about sadness, which is connected to desolation, like a loss of, then how he went to both tzaddikim. he wasn't ignoring, God forbid, Rabba Bar Huna. He says that imagine a person encounters two of these birds. That means you're living in the most desolate place. So it doesn't matter that the Gashmis, they were in Eretz Yisrael. When he encountered the Churban, that we physically lost these two Amayroyim, he says, we have this bird and that bird that represent desolation. They encountered each other. Right? Okay. God was upset at his world, and God snatched souls. But for God, it's good. We lost. But for God, the Samach Behem Kekala Chadosh. As a chassan is Misameach on a new Kala that he never married first, that's the joy that you have in the heavens. Roichev Arava is the one who's writing on Aravos. Now we're going to learn the next Masechta Chagiga that you have what we call the seven heavens, and the highest heaven is called Aravos. Not every tzaddik is able to go to that level. Was trying to speak about that Roichev Aravis, which is a reference to God, the one who rides on top of Aravis. But if a tzaddik is not of the level that he can go to this highest heaven, then you wouldn't refer to God as the Roichev Aravis. Versteis? Roichev Aravis sas v'sameach b'voy elav nefesh naki v'tzadik. That was the eulogy of the Yanuka, and he began addressing Rav Hamnuna, calling him Gesha Yeshishim to counter the mistake of the Arab. If the Arab wouldn't have mixed in, the two camels would have been there. Okay. And here's the hesped, giving a hesped to Ravina. That palm trees wave your tops, because a tzaddik is compared to a tamar. All of the palm trees should wave their tops. Al tzaddik atamar. Al tzaddik atamar. And we nasim leilois kiyamim. We should eulogize. They used to eulogize during the day. We should eulogize at night like we do during the day. You know why? Al mesim leilois kiyamim. Because the Ravina learned day and night. So if he lived day and night, we have to eulogize day and night. Now here we go. There was a great eulogizer that his name was Bar Kipoik. And Avashi did something very interesting. He wanted to hear what eulogy will be given to him after his passing. So he walked over to Bar Kipoik and he told him, Hahu Yoima, on that day, which means on the day that I will pass away, my Yomanat, what will you say? Now, I want you to know there's different ways of learning the Gemara. Whatever he said, Rav Ashi was very unhappy with him. And we're going to go with one of the approaches, because if someone ever tells you, what would you say? The right response is, you will have a long life. That was in the times of the Gemara. You know what we say now? You're going to live until Mashiach. You're going to live forever. Don't give a heads up. So that was a mistake that he made. But he gave a eulogy. So Amalei, Amina, this is what I'm going to say. That im ba'arazim nafashal heves, that if even on cedar trees a flame came, then he said, God took a tzaddik, is ma yasu ezoy bekir. Out of the walls, you have little grassalach that grow. We are like those hysops. I think that's the word in English. Ezoy. In other words, I'm going to tell the people that if someone like Rav Ashi passed away, what do you think? We're going to live forever? He says the Leviathan, he compared Rav Ashi, he was the greatest fish. Greatest tzaddik, and Pi Chasidus, not the tzaddikim from Alma de Soive, from Alma de Skasio, and Bechako Hoy Alo, if a hook, that's the Malach HaMavos, managed to trap the Leviathan, so Mayasu the gator cock, we fishalach, we're living in shallow waters. What do you think? We're going to escape the hook? Benachal Shoitiv Nafla Chaka, dryness came about in the storming Nachal. We are garnished of waters. It's my ya'asu b'nei govin. That's what I'm going to say. Now, before Rav Ashi opined, whether he liked the eulogy or not, Bar Kipoik had a competitor. Right? Now, Rav Ashi didn't ask his competitor, but the competitor seized the moment and told him, you didn't give a good eulogy. I'll give a good eulogy. Don't even use that as an example, because you're speaking about a hook, a chaka. You're speaking about a flame. A tzaddik doesn't come out with a hook or a flame. In Misas Neshikin, it's a whole different type of passing. But tzaddik amina, they're not taking tzaddikim. Okay, so Rav Ashi heard that. Rav Ashi heard that the Bar Oven was not happy with the eulogy. So Rav Ashi asked him, what would you say? This is what I will say by your eulogy. That bechul avolim, that we should only cry for the mourners. Not for the one who is the Aveda. In other words, for the tzaddik, after you'll pass away, for you it's good. Like he just mentioned, there's no oynish, there's no kafakela, no chibot hakever, there's no gehenim. For the tzaddik, it's good. We are crying for ourselves. But how did he call Rav Ashi? He called him an Aveda. Not so respectful. It's like the lost one. Shehi, because he, the tzaddik l'menucha. It's only us that are going into anacha. After Rav Ashi heard both eulogies, chalash dati Elyahu, he was upset. Again, either details or because the whole concept is not kosher. You know what happened to these two eulogizers? These apuch karayu, their feet turned upside down. Let me describe this. If this is a foot, their ankles became so twisted that what used to be the bottom of the feet were now on the top. What's the meaning of that? I don't know. It's not that I know the rest. I also don't know. So when you know what happened when Rav Ashi actually passed away, they didn't come to give a eulogy. Maybe they were afraid.
Maybe they couldn't walk.
Oh. Now, now you understand when Rav Ashi once made a statement. This is a detailed halacha. Halacha has to deal with every case. So in the din of chalitza that we'll learn soon in Yavamis, so one of the things is that she has to untie the shoe that he's wearing, and the words that you have on Parshas Kiseitze is v'cholza na'aloi me'al ragloi. So there's a halacha. What happens if the brother's foot is turned upside down? So his shoes are also upside down. So you can't do chalitza. And Rav Ashi used as an example that not bar kipoitz can have chalitza done to him, nor bar oven chalitz. Now you understand why. The Rav Ashi knew that they had this predicament because it was from Rav Ashi's kpeda that their feet were turned upside down. Right. Rabban kavas lediglas Omar lebar oven. Now, Barav, the Gemara wants to say, wasn't only a eulogizer. Why was he a eulogizer, Yaakov? Because certain people, they have a way with words. And you know what? When you pray to Hashem, if you know how to present things better, there's a koyach in your tefillah. So we want to speak about the koyach of his dibur. That when Rava once came to the diglas, and there was some danger to cross it, he needed a special prayer. So he asked Rabbi Oven, Kumei Milsa, daven for me. Koyva Omar, he stands up and he says, that that the majority of the third is coming into water. So first of all, the Jewish people are called shalishis. Rashi says, Yisrael nikram shalishis. And he wanted to tell God that the Rava is like, he's tantamount to, he's equal to the majority of the Jewish people. That's a good prayer, because if you're telling God that the majority of the Jewish people are going through the diglas, please have rachmanas, make sure the waters don't drown. You know, sometimes for a yachid, it's not zeicha. Here he's speaking about an abin. That's a beautiful prayer. Zochayr v'rachem. And he did tshuva. He did a collective tshuva. Te'inu ma'acharecha ki isho mebayla. And therefore, al taznichenu, don't forsake us. Ka'ois meimara. You know, the side of meimara is that sometimes waters, as is done to a soita, is the medium through which God seeks retribution. So he's asking for rachma. He's really saying another double prayer. He's saying that if the Jewish people are sinful, sometimes the tzaddikim suffer on our behalf. So therefore, he's asking for God to forgive the sins of the public for our tzaddik not to get hurt. And I think that's a beautiful conclusion, just showing the greatness of the articulation of Rab Oven, which probably meant that his eulogy was a lot more meaningful than the one prior to him. The reason why Rav Ashi got upset, let's go with this mahalach, is because never give a pre-eulogy. What you should do is, you should daven for the person to live. And now we're going to learn about Chanin, Yochanan, Zera, Abba. Put a big Rebbe before all of them. Yaakov, Yosei, Shmuel, Chia, and Menachem. Showing how a tzaddik's passing doesn't mean that he completely departed the world. But like we mentioned in the intro, there is a connection between their presence and the world forever. And therefore, it makes sense that physical phenomena should continue to happen to the world connected to them. Now, during the moment of the passing, these physical things are lavdafka the most positive ones. But it just shows you that, like he said, that they're not going away. They're going to a little bit of a higher level. And with our effort, we have to make greater effort. We can stay in touch with them as they are still manifesting. Tzaddik is poyel, Yeshua is bikerev haaretz, even after the passing. Let's go. Rab Chanan, I'm sorry, I think I spoke ahead. We're getting there soon. The first story is like this. Rab Chanan, who was the son-in-law of the Beit Nesiah, he did not have children. And he davened, the koich of prayer. Boye Rachme, that means Rab Chanan davened. However, the day that his son was born, Nach Nafshe, Rab Chanan passed away. So Pasach Aleyahu Savnana, and he said these words: Simcha letuga nehepcha. Gladness, right? Simcha turned into tuga. Tuga means the sorrow. Sasain the yagain nidbakos. Sasain, the birth after many years of not having children with yagain. Be'es simchasai nena. And he says, Be'es chaninasai avet chaninoi. These are his words. At the time where the child was favored, that's chanina, favored with life. So Chanina's life was lost. And Asikolei Chanan al Shemei. And they named the child Chanan. Is that ayah? That the Ashkenazim are right. That you name after the passing. Okay. And I'm sure the Sfardim will
not raya. It just means you also name after the.
That is speaking on behalf of all the Sfardim. L'chaim. Good. Standing up for them. Genoch nafshe de Rabbi Yechanan. Psachale Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar. Kosha hayoim li Yisrael ki yoim boy hashemesh batzoraim. And this is important again. Like you said, that when you give a eulogy, you're not allowed to exaggerate, but you can embellish. And this cannot be said on anyone other than the great Rabbi Yechanan, because you know when were these words said? Amos, who spoke about the passing of Chizkiyahu HaMelech, the greatest king, right? The one that what he could have been Mashiach. That when he passed away, Amos says, imagine the sun setting at noontime. Those words were never said since Chizkiyahu HaMelech. So that was said on the passing of Rabbi Yechanan. His passing was like the sun setting. I know that this. Let me tell you how to appreciate the statement. That I'm sorry, I take that back. This was said by the passing of Yoshio, Melech Yoshio, the Tzaddik Yoshio. You know how old was Yoshio when he passed away? Um, 39 years old. Very, very young. That's why the expression was said that the sun set at noon. How old was Rabbi Yechanan? He was 120 years old, if I'm not mistaken, like Moshe Rabbeinu. So these are very strong words to say that doesn't matter. That the tragedy of the passing of Rabbi Yechanan is like we need this tzaddik. It's like the sun set at noon.
Is it connected to the fact that he's the one who said the quote? This is V'amar Rabbi Yochanan?
No. V'amar Rabbi, yeah. Rabbi Yechanan was very good. Rabbi Yechanan, while he was alive, but he was speaking about Yoshio. He says the pasuk of Amos was said regarding Yoshio. Okay, finished. Now, when Rabbi Yechanan passed away, how great he was. So before we learned about Kriya, that's how we began the whole sugya. What about sitting Shiva? Do the people have to sit Shiva? No. Do you have to mark Shloshim? No. But Rav Ami sat for Rabbi Yechanan a full Shiva and a full Shloshim. Rav Ami was only following his own opinion. No one agrees with him, but he was following his own opinion. In other words, that's the tradition that Rav Ami had, that afilu Rabbi Shalim de Chachma. Rabbi Yechanan himself said that even if it's not just a Chacham, he taught you the majority of your Chachma. And by the way, it's not even a full day. Not even a full day. But Rav Ami disagreed with that. Or it could be Rav Ami himself felt that Rabbi Yechanan was different. Okay. We're going through the Namanik. So we learned through Chanan, Yechanan, and Abzeda. When Abzeda passed away, these are the words of the eulogy that was given. Because Abzeda was born in Eretz Shina. He was born in Babel. However, he moved young to the Holy Land. So Eretz Tzvi, right, one of the names for Eretz Yisrael, Gidlo Shashua, Eretz Yisrael raised her delights. Means Abzeda was the Shashuyim. Oy no Omra Rakas. Woe is it, said Rab, guys, we just learned Rakas, right? Remember, Megillah Rakas is Teveria. Ki ibda, because we lost our beautiful instrument, musical instrument. When Ababo passed away, maybe it's because there wasn't a proper eulogy, but here's this physical manifestations. Achisu amude de Keisara Maya. Wow. Even the pillars, there was some physical phenomena that happened. Pillars don't sweat that much. He passed away in Kesari. The pillars of Kesari were shedding tears. Then when Rabbi Yosi passed away, he passed away in Tzipoidim. Shofchu marzevid Tzipoida. There was a lot of reindeer and there's a lot of gutters. What do gutters spill? Water. Those waters turned red. Shofchu, imagine, marzevid Tzipoida Dama. When Rabbi Yaakov passed away, stars became visible during the day. How can stars be visible during the day? When there's an eclipse. In other words, the sun became dark. It became so dark that the stars became visible. When Navasi passed away, in his town, there was a storm. It was such a storm that the winds uprooted all the trees. When Abchia passed away, we just learned Rab Chia Namad Aleph, right? Rav Huna is buried near Rab Chia. Nechisu keipe de nura merekia. People witnessed a pillar of fire descending from the heavens. Now, this is a topic that we heard a lot of Hasidim. We hear Sipurei Tzadikim that by the burial of a tzaddik, his successor, his Mamal Makim, seized this pillar of fire. The reason we know that the Arizal became the Mamal Makim of Rav Moshe Cordovero, the Ramak, even though he was a newcomer, that Arizal, and who ultimately became his greatest scribe, right? Did not become his Mamal Makim because only that Arizal saw this pillar of fire and they believed him. So there's something about the tzaddik of the generation, the nasi of the generation. There was some sort of noida derokia, and everyone saw that when Abchia passed away. That was the greatness. That Rav Menachem, either Berab Yosi or Berab Samoi, when he passed away, if you remember, we learned in Kedushin or somewhere, we learned about him never looking at a coin. He was called Ben Kedoshim. Ben Kedoshim never looked at a coin because on every coin there's an image of a king. And even though the image of the king is not made l'shem avodah zarah, only l'shem kavod malchus ad hayom hazeh, but he was so away from avodah zarah, no graven image. So when he passed away, a miracle happened, and ishto'u salmonaya, all of the graven images. Rashi says not only the avodah zarah, but even the images on the coins in that region, for hevu lemech lotzai, it became a slab. Can you imagine? All of the people's coins lost their value. I know coins were made out of a precious metal, but the fact that it was a coin, it had this more value. A miracle happened, and all of the tzalam and the kitzur were destroyed. That Avtamchum berabchia, when he passed away, is katzitzu kol an derartaya. All of the monuments that were made for the deceased kings. Here in America, there's something called Mount Rushmore, which is amazing. It got destroyed. All of the monuments collapsed. In other words, this is because they were so connected to the higher levels of Yichudei Ilah. These monuments were not l'shem avodah zarah, but for tzaddik on that caliber, anything mulvadoi. This type of kibbut you give to a melech is on that level is not okay. And the whole idea that all of the avoid of the tzaddik becomes revealed in the world, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Egeres Chav Zayin. So at that moment, the world did not tolerate any type of expression of kibbut other than to God. And it manifested, begashmias, all of the tzalamim got destroyed. When Rebbe Elyahu passed away, Ichatru Shivin Machtarte Ben Ardo. He lived in Ardo. The presence of the tzaddik, a chassid makes an environment. Imagine a tzaddik. There were less ganovim. What happened the day he passed away? The koyach of evil felt, he passed away. We can steal. 70 new tunnels were dug. The ganovim were dig. In other words, that a lot of the Geneva came back. How do you bring law and order? One way is today in Golos through police. In other words, you need to have koyach. The ideal way of bringing law and order is having a tzaddik who inspires everyone to be good. The day he passed away, that inspiration left. Again, the tzaddik is ishtakach b'kula alma, but you have to make more effort. You can understand that. So the moment he left, the Ganovim woke up. The Rav Hamnuna, when Rav Hamnuna passed away, is nechisu keipe de bardram rekia. Hailstones fell from the heavens. The Rabba, and Rabbi Yosef, when they passed away, and they both passed away in Pompadis. Now, guys, we learned about them right at the end of Brachas. They were both the Rosh Yeshiva. That was the whole thing. Who's going to be the Rosh Yeshiva first? Ultimately, they both passed away. When the yeshiva was in Pompadisa, Pompadisa was a city built on the banks of Nahar Pras. So the bridges that were on that river, both times, they collapsed. Neshoik Kepe de Pras Ahadadi. In other words, the supporting arches, however they built bridges, they touched each other because they collapsed. The bridges broke. And similarly, the Abaya and Rava, at some point, you should know the yeshiva of Pompadisa moved to Mechaiza, especially later when Rava was the Rosh Yeshiva. So when they passed away, also these bridges on the banks of the Diglas, because Mechaiza was on the banks of the Tigris River. Pompadisa was on the banks of the Pras River. They collapsed and they touched each other. And the final one, when Masharshia passed away, to dikle, she'd say all of the palm trees produced, you know what? Thorns. What did that show? It showed that while he was alive, in his merit, everyone had produce. And it was important for that to become revealed. How did it become revealed? That when he's physically no longer here, now you have to earn it on your own, and we didn't have yet that level of schusim. Bottom line is, it's important to hold off today is that when a tzaddik passes away, not his body decomposes, and they can talk to each other, and if there's a need, they can move around under the grave to make room for the other, and going into their cave. I think to be prepared prior to, like we learned before, to understand who you're going to connect to. And on the positive is that indeed, that ishtakach, that they're found in this world even more than they're in their life. And if we make the effort to be connected to the tzaddik, then whatever they accomplished, giving us whatever a tzaddik accomplishes, the type of emunah that they engrave deeper in all of us, continues to happen even more than before, as long as we make our effort to be better connected to them. God willing, to be continued.
Or else you're going to become a
Wow.
digger.
Wow.
Not connected.
Oh yeah.